Here. Hello, sir. Boom, boom, boom. Good morning. Yes, sir. In contempt. I'd like to call the December 13th, 2017 Criminal Justice Committee meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mr. Byrne,
Present.
Mr. Hess, Mr. Washington, Mr. Legess, Mr. Stauffenberg, Mr. Vickery, Mr. Tholen, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Scott, Mr. Snipes, Mr. Seroy, Mr. Einfeld, Mr. Einfeld, Ms. Evans, Mr. Payton, Ms. Dunbar, Ms. Parker, Mr. Fairfield, Mr. Wheeler, Mr. Lear. We have a quorum.
Thank you very much. Need to approve the minutes from the meeting November 15th. Need a motion to approve. Mr. Hess, Mr. McConnell. All in favor? Opposed? Okay, Circuit Judicial. I don't see Judge Kramer. Circuit Clerk. I don't see Sandy. Need a motion. We have a report in your packet. Need a motion to approve. Mr. Stauffenberg. Seconded by Mr. Seroy. All in favor? Opposed? Public Defender. Gus. We have his report. Need a motion to approve. Mr. Payton, seconded by Mr. Parker. All in favor? Opposed? All right. Hey, we have a winner. Probation. Mr. Latham. In your packet, you'll have Mr. Latham's monthly report. Need a motion to approve. Mr. Seroy, seconded by Mr. Hess. How you doing? How you doing? Morning.
Good morning. Sorry, I'm running a little late here. I'm just glance at the usual statistics. We're closing in on the end of the year. You can see we had 2,284 successful contacts in November. Just over or 28,415 year to date.
Yeah. It is. Yep. Even had the volume up.
Completed 69 investigations last month, 611 year to date. We have 7 on GPS or some kind of alcohol monitoring device. And we did 129 drug tests, about 1,640 year to date, which comes out to about 30 gallons of urine. So I guess it was not that you care to know that, but I don't know if that's TMI or what, but
There's the fact of the day.
yeah, there you go. So I guess if it averages out to 2 to 3 ounces per drop, I don't know how many ounces in a gallon, but so we have juvenile population. We screened 25 minors for detention. Detained 17. We currently have 15 in detention, and 30 minors on some phase of home detention or home confinement. So that's it on the stats. Just to hit the usual stats.
Any questions or comments for Mr. Latham?
And then on the agenda, we had 2 vehicles that need to be declared surplus. These are a 2003 Chevy Impala and a 2005 Chevy Impala. Both are bad vehicles. I had to get that. Over 100,000. That's the one thing I forgot. But these 2 cars have been problems for us. We've limited them in town, Bradley, Bourbon, and Kankakee area for years. They couldn't take them out of town, but I'm happy to see them go.
Okay.
So
The motion to make motion to Mr. McConnell, seconded by Mr. Seroy.
the last thing I have is an issue regarding security at the annex. I've spoken with Andy a couple times, and Mr. Lear, we met yesterday, spoke to the sheriff a little bit about it. We had an incident last Friday afternoon where an individual came in, reported for a scheduled office visit. They discovered he had a warrant. When they took him into custody, he had a loaded weapon on him in his pocket. And it just brought up a issue that we've had for a long time at the annex about security there. I know it's a financial issue. There was a grievance filed years ago for this, which led to the sheriff putting a deputy in the building. The sheriff had to pull that deputy when we went through, I think, 2010 cuts, I believe it was. Like I said, I've talked to the sheriff about this. But it is an issue. We have a lot of issues there with Annex houses our office and the PD's office. So the traffic coming through there, everybody is involved in the criminal justice system that comes through there. You know, we have gang issues. We have a lot of mental health issues. And it being an open building, we also have issues of people just using it as a warming and cooling center. I was looking at the activity log yesterday, getting ready for this meeting, and a few weeks ago we had an officer walked into the bathroom, a male officer, to monitor a drop, to observe a drop. And there's an individual in there, not on probation, but totally naked, basically using the bathroom to bathe himself. Never reacted when they walked in. Finally, obviously they dealt with it and called city police. But we have issues of men being in the female bathroom. When females go into the restroom, there's males in there, and one guy was laying on the floor as if he was napping on the bathroom floor. But we've had a lot of issues over the years, and I think with the population we deal with who's coming in to see Gus, I think it's something I'd like to go look for, you know, keep this conversation going. I know it's a financial issue, but I think we need to really discuss. I don't think we're overreacting, or I'm overreacting this one. It's in on Friday. I think if you look back over 10, 20 years, there's been a lot more attention paid to security at courts at all level and government buildings of all kinds. And I just wanted to bring that to, you know, this was kind of an incident, and led me to go talk to Andy and Mr. Lear and the sheriff and stuff. So I just wanted to bring it to this committee for discussion.
It's a potential serious issue.
Yeah, I mean,
with safety.
I took Friday off. I was up Christmas shopping with my wife, and when they called me, told me about it, and on the way back, you know, 50 different scenarios went to my head of what could have happened. The officers did a great job of getting the individual cuffed and securing the weapon right away. So it was really not an incident there, but it could have gone bad. And so.
Chairman?
Thank you. You know, I do, after our conversations, I do, you know, agree with you that we have some issues there with the clientele, so to speak, and propensity to carry weapons and put people in danger. And then the conflicts that could exist between people in the public defender's office and your office through the cliques that they're in. So I would say that it might take a small working group, maybe a board member and yourselves, to take a look at, you know, with the people that are in charge, obviously the security of the building and those things. But you know, whether it's a personnel issue, maybe it's a technology issue, like the banks have installed that, you know, gated hallway type thing where you got to come in and it scans you, and then it lets you in after that point when it knows you don't have a weapon. Maybe it's technology or a combination of both. You know, because if you add up, you know, full-time people times 365, what are you, 6 days a week? You have Saturdays too?
Well, that's field units. We're not open to.
You're not open to the
5 days
public.
a week.
Okay, it's 5 days a week, but still, you're still talking, you know, a lot of man hours to be open that time. Maybe a technology solution might be, in the long run, something that would be more cost effective. So I would say talk amongst yourselves, and if you would, you know, at some point maybe involve the board in that conversation. When we
Yeah,
start
I mean, I'm
narrowing it down.
far from an expert on building security, but I do think that it seems like there needs to be some level of screening as you come in. I think.
Very serious issue. Right?
Yeah, I mean, again, maybe that's not the answer. Like I said, the sheriff or whoever, they might have a lot more about this than I do, but I think that's the issue. I think, you know, to respond to it's one thing when something's happening, but I think maybe to stop what's coming in and who's coming in, and, you know. But again, it's a discussion to have.
Yeah. Ms. Parker? Microphone.
Can we start looking into grants to maybe help with this? You know, if we need equipment, security equipment, can we start looking into different types of grants out there?
Oh yeah, I'd be happy to look in any kind of funding for it. Like I said, when I was talking to Andy, I kind of jumping the gun here, but we had a Wednesday committee meeting. There's no numbers. There's no, you know, it's just a discussion. I'm kind of getting ahead of myself, but because of the timing of this meeting, I thought, and the timing of the issue we had Friday.
It's a serious issue, and I'm a former grant writer, and I would be glad to volunteer to help you do that.
Thank you.
I have a lot of time on my hands now.
Yeah.
Or figure a short-term solution too, because this is something that's a safety issue for our employees as well.
Yeah, and we have people in the building that are armed. Half our probation staff's armed, and we just got the cameras. We're in the last phase of getting that installed, new cameras, and once I can replace computers and staff can be able to see that on their monitor, we have to get new computers before that can happen. So we're trying to do little things, like, other things like that for the building, but I think, so I just, like I said, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I don't have much information for you, but I just want to kind of bring it to the committee, so. Yeah, so,
Plan and to research that, so if we start now,
yeah.
before
Hopefully.
it gets worse.
Yeah, thank you, I appreciate it. That's all I have.
Thank you. Yeah. We did the vote. Yeah. Yep. Ms. Ciance.
Good morning. My apologies for being late this morning. You've all, approved my reports. I just wanted to explain them a little bit. The Harris & Harris report, I went ahead and just submitted the open inventory analysis that did not include the felonies, so that it's a truer picture of what was, oh wait, this one, I guess I submitted the wrong one, I'm sorry. It does show the felonies. Okay, so the Harris & Harris Illinois Local Debt Recovery Program, as you can see, we are closer to the 2015 numbers so we're up quite a bit of money. I think that's due in part to they are doing a wage deduction court call where they're calling people in, and they send attorneys down to have this court call, and it's obviously been fruitful, so that's been a good help. And then the state's attorney court call report, you can see we've broken it down for every month. That's when they go before Judge Tungate, and that's brought in in excess of $86,000 to the good. So things are moving along in the circuit clerk's office as far as the money goes. I'm probably going to have another file submitted through iDrop, like an updated file. So when the tax season hits, our office is going to be super busy collecting money with that. So that's about it for the collections. Anybody have any questions?
Any questions at all, Ms. Jansen?
Good. Okay. So then for the computerization update, we are opening up to do all the civil cases now for e-filing. There was a new Supreme Court rule that just came down yesterday that will allow for a pro se litigant to not have to file through e-file under certain circumstances. Some of them being if they don't have a computer, if they don't have access to a computer, if they're incarcerated, they would be able to file through paper. But also, one that I'm kind of happy about is for the people that are filing for orders of protection. Those people, when they come in, they're under a lot of duress. A lot of them, it's taken them a lot of encouragement to come in to even file the order of protection, and so I can't. They're just not in a good state, and so just filling out the 11 pages of paperwork is daunting in and of itself, and then to have to try to figure out how to then come in and sign up to e-file and do all that. So they will be able to submit, there's a form that they can.
You have my report for October, and really there's nothing new to report. We're just plugging along, doing what we can. I kind of agree with Tom about the situation in our building. It seems like it's getting worse. There's a lot of contact that we have with clients. Sometimes those clients are agitated, mentally ill, conflicting gang numbers. I mean, even if the sheriff could have a deputy at, numerous deputies have court appearances throughout the day at the courthouse, and even when they're done with their court appearance, if they could just, do a walkthrough in our building, check the bathrooms, the stairwells, that would be a big help. But where our building's located, and there's different entrances, and it's not a secure building, and vehicles can be parked right next to the building, so that it's just a pretty wide open space there. But other than that, we're doing our job, and unless there's any questions, that's all I got.
Anything from Mr. Regas? Speechless. Take this. Have a Merry Christmas. Mr. Rowe. You have the grand jury report in your packet. Need a motion to approve. Mr. Snipes, seconded by Mr. Washington. All in favor? Opposed? Morning.
Morning.
Nice day to have your top down, isn't it?
You see from the grand jury report, we're 704 through the year. We've got one grand jury left. I believe it's actually tomorrow. I think there's about 45 cases that will add to that number. So we'll probably be right around 750.
What's that compared to like last year?
It's about a 50% increase.
Wow. That's great.
I guess.
Yeah.
It's,
Sad, but
yeah. Anyone have any questions on that?
questions, comments? Mr. Rowe?
So, the diversion program, what we're looking to start in January, is a program that will assist first-time nonviolent misdemeanor offenders and first-time nonviolent class 3 and 4 felony offenders. An emphasis on the word nonviolent. These are not people that are out committing violent crimes. They're not burglarizing homes, breaking into homes, home invasions, none of that. These are for nonviolent offenses. And the goal is to not only keep a conviction off their background for a first offense or to, especially a felony conviction, but it's also to keep those cases out of the courthouse from the start. The goal being, on the one hand, to reduce the caseload of the public defender's office, the cases that are flowing through the circuit clerk's office, the judge's caseload in the state's attorney's office. If we can keep fewer cases, I guess prevent more cases from going into the system, will lessen that burden to a certain extent. At the same time, these offenders are going to go into a diversion program prior to a case being filed. So we've reviewed it. There's merit there. This is a case we would charge. Let's just say a retail theft, for instance. This is a case we would charge, but we're going to give them the option to go into diversion. In the diversion program, they will pay a fee to participate in this. That money is used to cover the expense of operating that program. The expense of a staff member in my office, the expense of the educational component of that program as well. That's where they have to complete either online or in-person courses. There's also a community service component to it, so they'll need to perform a certain number, somewhere between 10 and 50 hours of community service in the community in which they committed their crime. So they're repaying the neighborhood that they offended in. And in addition to that, the second educational component is if the offender does not have a high school diploma, they're required to go and meet with a GED counselor out at KCC. So they're made aware of free opportunities to take some training classes or prep classes to pass the GED test. And if they have a high school diploma or a GED, they're required to go out to KCC and meet with a college advisor. So they realize there may be some opportunities for them to further their education, whether it's through maybe the construction careers program or through a regular academic, I guess, avenue of study. So we're really pushing it so that there's still a consequence. There's still a burden on the offender, so they learn that lesson. They're also exposed to opportunities that will help to hopefully keep them out of the system. You know, further along people are in their education or in their experience, the less likely they are to end up on the third floor of the courthouse. It pays for itself. There's no cost to the taxpayers for this program. And the fee that we're charging for the program, I believe it's $200 or $250. You know, at first glance that may seem like a lot, but the reality is, on a speeding ticket, if you go into the courthouse on a speeding ticket, you're paying more than that just for the fines for court supervision. If you have a misdemeanor, your fines are, like over $600, I think, even on a low-level misdemeanor. So this is by far the cheapest option for them if they want, and it allows them to not only avoid the conviction, but they don't have to go later and pay for a fee or have a fee waived to have a record expunged. Yes.
Ms. Evans?
I think it sounds like a really great idea. I guess one suggestion that I would have is not offering the option to take it at home online, because you don't know who's taking that when it does happen. And I think if they have to report somewhere, I just feel like there would be more responsibility behind, you know, maybe making it more serious to them if it's a hands-on, and I know it's probably going to take man hours from somebody to have to make sure that they're in whatever class or the education that you're wanting them to do. So you're saying there would, and then I have a question. So you're saying if they're paying that fee, diversion fee, then there are no fines that they have to pay, or they would be paying that in addition to?
No, the diversion
fines.
fee is all they would have to pay because the case is never filed against them. So there are no court fines, there's no court costs, there's no tax on the system. So it keeps the case completely out of the system. So they have approximately 21 days from when they receive the letter to sign up for this program. So then we know that they want to participate in the diversion. They're given 30 to 60 days, depending on the number of community service hours, to complete that program. If at that point they haven't completed it or signed up after the 21 days, we file the case against them and it goes through a normal court process. But if they sign up, that's all they pay. As for the at-home versus classroom, so we wanted to make sure if it is an at-home program that it's interactive. You know, someone can't just play it in the background. So this is where they have to be actively participating in it. They have to answer questions. It is hard to police who's behind that computer doing it for them. The problem is the classes are designed for specific offenses. So for us to try to do an in-person class for every offense under the sun, where you may have only one or two people in a class, at times the costs would go up substantially. But the goal is to reduce the burden on the system, make sure that the criminals are paying for the program, and help people keep their record clean so they're still employable.
Mr. Reinfeldt?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Is there any tracking of what the person's prior record is? When you said, maybe I had missed it also, for a first-time felony offense, does it count also as in the line of misdemeanor offenses and what's led up to this point in the person's life?
So every case that comes through for screening, our office runs a leads background on the individual, so we know their history. We know what their prior convictions are, prior arrests. If it is a first-time felony and they have nonviolent misdemeanors in their background, so for instance, a retail theft, their first one's a misdemeanor. If they have that conviction in their background, they catch a second one, now it's a felony, that is a case that can be diverted because they are nonviolent offender. Otherwise, here's what we run into otherwise. We file that second retail theft as a felony. Right, Mr. Regas has to appoint a PD to that case. It's a serious case because it carries a felony conviction. And then, probation probably may have a role in that at some point. The judge has got it on his calendar. And then we're going to bump another case. Somewhere down the road, another case that's set for trial is going to be bumped so we can try a guy who maybe stole $10 worth of stuff from a store, but it's a felony because it's his second offense. So it's harder then to get to the trials and put those resources into the cases we need to be focusing on, which are the violent offenders.
I follow you, and I see the
the path and reasoning behind it. Thank you.
Mr. Washington.
I commend you on the program. One of the things that I've noticed over the years is that industry has several objectives when they look at a community to move into it. One of them is education and criminal background checks. And we have had difficulty in bringing industry in here simply because of the educational component isn't high enough. And with these people going to KCC and looking at the prospects of being able to better themselves, I think it's a step in the right direction.
You know, there may be someone that just doesn't think they can afford college, but they're not aware of scholarship or financial aid opportunities. So hopefully this exposes someone to it.
Great idea. Real quick, Mr. Snipes.
So you're taking so you're taking away union jobs? No. No. No.
There you go.
I do applaud the efforts. Certainly, it's a breath of fresh air in the state's attorney office when you consider all other aspects and also give these individuals who are really nonviolent offenders an opportunity for redress. And one of the things I applaud is one of the examples that I use of many is Judge Mathis. Judge Mathis had gotten into trouble. He got into trouble where he could have gotten a felony. And everybody knows who Judge Mathis is by now. So you find out that someone gave Judge Mathis this additional opportunity, and he eventually turned his life around, and now you see basically what comes out of that. Nonviolent offenders, as I agree, you know, you get a second theft, that's a felony, you know, you be criminals, and I've worked in the prison system, so I do know how that's run. You actually put them back into a gang environment because, and hardcore. So I applaud the efforts of, it's almost like giving the individual a second opportunity to kind of get things right. And I think that's the right direction. And we always focus on, okay, they're in here, let's, you know, do what we do. But then it's a fresh reproach. I would like to probably have like a brief outline where I can now explain this to churches or NAACPs. I think that's something that needs to be out there. That's almost like a good news in a bad situation that needs to be addressed, and I guess is well needed. So I applaud your efforts upon that. For that, I know I'm trying to get George to do a CD because I know how much Jim appreciates, you know. Yeah, he's been trying to get that CD. I'm gonna get it to you by Christmas, though.
He's an inspiration.
But thank you.
Oh, Ms. Evans. There you go.
I guess I am having one problem with you saying that like a person could have already been arrested for retail theft and now it's their second offense. Are your rules on this already set in stone, or are you still, is it, I mean, January's almost here, so I'm guessing it must be, because I work in the retail world. I'll give a statistic. I work, the two departments I'm over are men's and kids. Those are the two highest at Carson's. In a typical year, we'll have between $50,000 and $60,000 worth of polo walking out of our door. So just to think that now they're on their second offense and they still don't have to, just because they didn't use a gun or have any violence, now they have to pay a minimal, and to me, $250 is pretty minimal. And I don't know how long the classes are, if it's how many hours, and then the community service. I feel like if they've already done it a second time, they've probably done it a lot more than 2 times. They just didn't get caught, only but twice. I don't know. I guess that's little more personal to me. I'm not sure if that's,
So
if
some-
it's a first offense, maybe, but the second,
So
I don't
some
know.
of, one thing I failed to mention was the restitution component. So for a criminal damage to property or a theft case, there's a restitution component. So they have to be able to pay the value of either the damage or the theft.
Okay.
Now, stores have a civil remedy in that respect where whether the person is charged or not, they can go after that offender civilly and recover the value of the items. So even if you recover those items in the parking lot, so the store gets it all back, they can still go after that individual for the value of the items that they attempted to steal. I hear what you're saying. You know, I don't want people committing repeat offenses and getting away with it either, but I cannot clog up the court system and have attorneys devoting time to prosecuting felony retail thefts for minimal amounts when we have, you know, violent criminals awaiting trial that we're trying to launch, so to say.
and I
send
understand,
away.
I mean, again, I applaud the process, the thinking behind it. I think it's great. The GED part, I think is awesome, that's part of the requirement. If they don't have their, you know, if they don't have a diploma, that you're at least making that a really strong presentation to them and part of that program. I mean, there's many components about it. I don't know, I guess there's just a couple that I'm a little shaky on, but
Yeah,
thank you.
I do understand the concern. I do.
Mr. Snipes.
If I'm not mistaken, I thought I heard that in lieu of them not receiving a charge against them as far as that's concerned, that there's an educational component, but there's a community service component that's built into there. So they're not getting away scot-free. And in fact, it is. I don't know how this system is, but I do know the courts take the minimum wage by the number of hours or whatever. So in the fine, excuse me, if the fine was $800, they divide whatever the minimum wage is, into the $800, and that's kind of the hours of community service. And here, there's factored in like a 10 to 15 hour community service. That's a lot of that's a lot of free time for something $10. If I was to do the minimum, 2 hours would cover. Would be more than enough to cover it. But in this case, it's 10 to 15 hours. So I think in the process, I think Mr. Rowe and whatever team put that together kind of factored that in or whatever. So there is an element to do that. And then it's also saying, I want you to go. I'm not mandating that you get education, but I want you to see the opportunities to better the situation. I think that element is missing because some people steal, but other folks steal because there is, they could have been out on the street, been hungry, whatever. And it doesn't justify it, but it does say that if they do go into the court system, what happens if a jury just finds them not guilty? Now you have put a lot of resources and a lot of taxpayer dollars off of something that was just $10. So the greater good of Plato says, let's kind of outweigh the cost. I think in this case, the remedy is we put together something that makes them accountable and at the same time helps them. And if they continue to do it, I'm certain that they're going to fall back in the system. But if they change, then it's worth its weight in gold to me.
Thank you, sir. Anything else for Mr. Rowe?
And you know, really, if they go into the court system and they're convicted or they plead guilty, the way things are trending in Springfield, they're going to probably be released anyway. So they're not ever going to serve a single day on a felony retail theft. And the fines that they're assessed are going to end up on this next report because they won't be paid.
Makes perfect sense. Mr. Einfeld.
They fall into it again and steal something that any offense that ends up to be a felony. Does the prior one then fall into place also?
It does not, but you can only participate in this diversion program one time.
You know, I like I said, anything that you can do to turn somebody a little bit. And believe me, I know a lot of. I grew up in areas with a lot of the people that will be using this, their children, because it just goes from parent to child to grandchild in this situation. But I definitely see Sally's, you know, now we yet have another layer of leniency for lawbreakers. And that's the whole point here, you know. After we get this one and everybody figures out they can, well, I can go do whatever I want for this case too, as long as I don't have a, you know, a weapon or this or that creates a stipulation that doesn't allow this program. I can do that too, and I can breeze through that one. So I understand what Sally's saying, and trying to keep track of somebody there. It's only a one-time offense that they're going to get through it. Next time, no matter what goes on, how light it was, the felony offense lays on them. So
Yes.
I was just curious, in my mind, find out if the case of, well, he went through this program and it didn't seem to do any good, if that falls into play, should they get into the trouble a second time?
Yeah, we're not going to
It's not-
revive
Yeah.
cases that they've already completed the diversion program for, because they completed their part.
Sure.
Right, if they reoffend, they'll be charged with a felony. But after a year, we'll evaluate, we'll look and see what the recidivism rate for people that go through the program. If the program isn't working, we'll stop it. Yeah.
Good idea. That was a good idea. Thank you, sir. Mr. Gessner. In your packet, you'll have Bob's monthly report. Need a motion, monthly report, monthly receipts of money. Need a motion to combine and approve. Mr. Seroy, second by Mr. Vickery. All in favor? Opposed?
Good morning to everybody, and happy holidays when it comes on here. You can see on our report, hopefully in the next meeting, if not in the January meeting, I'll have a full report on my 2000, Matt?
Yes, you are. For some reason, it's not.
For some reason, yeah, it's probably not working. But anyhow, I'll have my full report on 2017. We should be ending the year, as you can see, our autopsies are considerably at 130 autopsies we've had this year, which is unbelievable amount that we've had when we were in the 89 to 96 autopsies in the further 2016 and 15. Basically, as you can see, our overdoses should end up, as of this point right now, 56 overdoses. With all the raids that are going on in the county here, we're seem to bring our little statistics down there, but we were excited about that, but then all of a sudden we got hit with the month of December already, and we've already got hit in our new budget already. So, but in that 56, I want you to understand that there's 20 of them out there that may be involved in an overdose, but they were involved in an automobile accident, maybe a blunt force trauma from an automobile mishap. That was the cause of death, and it wasn't necessarily because they were on cocaine or heroin or THC. So you can almost add on to that that could possibly be a 76. And then, of course, we've had this year already 28 Narcan saves by the police officers, which is outstanding, which is roughly about $40,000 savings right there. Think about that. A $40,000 savings where we're at right now, where I'm way over, well, almost 150 plus over on my budget. So that's good news. Also, yesterday, I'll continue to talk about before I go back to that section there. I think that our next problem here is it's coming to our area here, coming fast. Our area is all surrounded through us from Champaign on up to Will County and DuPage County. There is meth. Meth is coming back to us, coming back very strong. They got hit over the weekend in Champaign with approximately 10 overdoses with 4 fatalities. So that's coming towards our way. We're watching that. And the mixing of drugs. They're mixing now because maybe this fear of fentanyl out there is a fear, but they're mixing the heroin with fentanyl and with other drugs right now. Cycloprophenol is basically hit us in the Essex area, which was coming down from Will County. That's as powerful, just a little bit under carfentanil, and that's already into our county already. So the U47700 drug is out there. That's already hit us, and we're doing another toxicology right now on that to see if that did come to our county yet. That's another powerful, between 80 to 90 times more powerful than morphine itself. I told you that I'm on the committee of the statewide terrorism intelligence center, which is STIX, with the Illinois State Police. I'm due to go down there again on Tuesday. And it was very, very shocking to see their map that we're drawing out, and hopefully I'll have that here in January a little bit. I know the sheriff gets a lot of his information from that too, but it winds right down from DePage Will right into Kankakee County, right in the eastern part of Kankakee County, which makes me think about one thing. Is I talked to you about I'm always giving you what's going on in here, but if you go back to 2014 when we started to see all this heroin problem, what did we have in Kankakee County that was so strong that stopped a lot of this? Was our major crime task force, which we lost. That was a big unit where I could walk across the hall here and be able to talk to them about that. I don't have that anymore. But everybody seems to know that. We're lacking a police patrol. And this is why we're now in the map of the eastern part of the county where we're getting it. Where Indiana's coming over to our area. Young kids, young adult male, females, that they just watch them coming into our county. We got to stop that. We got to find a way to stop that because this is costing us a lot of money. And not only the money-wise, the lives that we're losing. Young kids all the way up to the 70 years old.
I rode along with the deputies on Thanksgiving night. We were out in Pembroke, and the amount of traffic coming from Indiana was alarming. I mean, I joked with the deputy. I go, you'd think the county fair was going on. 9 o'clock on a Thanksgiving night, coming in from Indiana. Just the amount of traffic, like Bob was saying, it's alarming.
It is alarming, and it's it's just something that I'm seeing. I really do miss the major crime task force. I think something has to be developed on somewhere to protect our citizens of Kankakee County. I'm working well with the state's attorney. My hat's off to him on the things that he's provided to help me in my situation. I've been up there to watch some of the court cases that are going on. I've been into the ministry of I might say it, LaSalle Ministry. I got to talk to 6 people along with Jasper Jones from the Sheriff's Department. We got to talk about what's going on in the county and how do they get all this stuff and how close is it to us. It's right in our county. It's really scary out there. And with the several new drugs that are coming in, the new methoxyacetylfentanyl, there's 400 fentanyls out there in the United States right now, and they're all coming this way. Cocaine's being mixed with, you're not really getting the real cocaine anymore. You're getting a mixture. And here comes the marijuana that really agitates me because it's laced already. We've already had cases of laced marijuana with fentanyl in it, with heroin in it. Even in your pop cans, we've learned about, you get your Pepsi container, now just use Pepsi, 7-Up, whatever. You put the bottle cap on there. Underneath that bottle cap is a piece of cotton. They pour their stuff into that, so you're never going to test that out, Pepsi and all that. You shake it, and then you take that cotton ball, and now you moisten it, and then now you eject it into a needle, and into the arm you go. That's what's happening too. And I see this in all the cases that Eric and I go back and look at. We see all the Gatorade, all the different bottled waters and stuff like that. This is what people do. So, within the money that I've got still in our grant, I'm gonna bring in a guy that cost us a lot of money, but it didn't cost the county a penny. This, as you got right now, I can look right straight at the sheriff. The sheriff is the one that brought me the idea to go after this. He can tell you a little bit about this gentleman here and how impressed he was. Eric and I saw him in Watsika, but coming from the sheriff, I think you'll understand how powerful he was.
Sure.
Tim Ryan actually came back in February of 2016 with the sheriff's office, and they actually stood up in front of a lot of the sheriffs, talked about his history with his family history, how he's involved, how he's trying to make things better. There are a lot of people out there who are recovered addicts who are out there talking about it. Tim Ryan does it, I think, what we need to do, and I don't want to talk about this some other times, is the treatment part of it. Anybody can come out and talk about, yeah, I was addicted to heroin and I beat it. And kudos to those people. What there is no money for is treatment. And that's what these people need. And about 8 or 9, I mean, they're saying that people have to go through treatment 8 or 9 times before they actually are able to get off of these opioids. And the cost of that, people don't have money for treatment. It's very expensive. Tim Ryan is involved with a number of treatment centers all over the country and has the ability to get people in treatment. That's other than his story, which is an awesome story. Show up on the 16th of January and be impressed by just his story. He's a multi-millionaire with a number of jobs. This isn't a guy who grew up with nothing and was just a heroin addict all his life. He had a productive job. He was making a lot of money living up north in the suburbs. He lost it all. So the important part from his perspective is getting people treated. And that's where all this is headed eventually. Affordability of treatment for people is just unrealistic for some. With his assistance, I think we can help our local community get people into treatment.
Thank you. So you've got this. Not only is he going to speak at KCC, he's going to speak in front of the Chiefs Association right here. I'm providing lunch for the chiefs and the sheriff and his group out here, so we can kind of watch it. And I might be going to that Lasam ministry. I'm getting learned at. Over there to see some of the addicts that are over there, to talk to them and moving around with him before we go here. I think it's a positive note. I'm excited about him coming and basically on the help. We're going to have vendors there from Riverside to Helen Wheeler, all of the different types of help out there. So I appreciate if you would show. It means a great deal to me to see that you know what we're doing out there. And last but not least, and I'll get off my stand out of here, is the other day we had a gentleman in our morgue for 60 days in the freezer. Did a lot of trying to find family, and we found out that this guy had a lot of money, roughly about $400,000 in the Wells Fargo bank. Well, Eric did his master's on his computer. We were able to get into the Wells Fargo bank to see what he had and how we can get into it. We had a Kankakee County Administrator office to be able to help with us. So we received and billed him for every little bit that we had in for all of our electricity, all of the stuff that we do over there, and the amount of hours it took out there. We got a check for $6,680 some dollars, which is a total that we've given back to the county, to the general fund, of $10,000. And we're happy to do that. But the roughly, it's sometimes it's a pleasure to give back a little money back to the county, and that goes back. But it also pays for our indigent people. That it costs us right around $4,000. So it's giving back money to the county to say, hey, I'm doing the best of my ability to help in every way. I know I'm way over. I can't help it. So I'll take any questions.
Mr. Snipes.
In addition to that, I hope he was put away properly and had a nice homegoing service. But
He did.
that's good. We
Very
found
nice.
the family.
That was paid for out of that money too, not
Right.
out of my money.
But out of them. And one of the things, I know that you put this out, but if you haven't got a lot of them out and you're going to put them out, that in that paragraph where it goes to down to the third sentence, Riverside Healthcare, and continue our efforts. I think we want to just put the word "to" in there, to continue our efforts. That third, just go down the third sentence. I mean the third, third line over to right after Riverside Healthcare. Put the word "to" in. That way it's more consistent. I want to kind of concur. I looked at the word "hope," and I kind of came up with that acronym, helping other people succeed. I don't want to say helping opiate people succeed, but helping others to succeed. I think that's a program that needs to spear out. When I worked in the Pontiac, which is they call it the Thunderdome, one of the things I always said is that I wish that some of the money that it costs to incarcerate would be utilized to rehabilitate, because they get no treatment when they're in there. Matter of fact, a lot of the educational programs, when they say Department of Corrections, they need to go back to just saying prison or whatever, because Department of Corrections does not correct. We call it Department of Corrections, but it's not there to correct. So as a result, if we can get some of the prison money to be diverted, because what it costs just to imprison these individuals is astronomical, 29 to 30,000. If we could take half of that and start putting them to rehabilitation programs, I think that would be a step in the right direction. But how are we going to get the state and federal government to listen? It'll probably be another 100 years down the road. But I do applaud your efforts of going from place to place. Brandon House, I know I used to work with Brandon House or whatever, and a lot of the some of the individuals that were successful through Pastor Bonds, Morningstar, and that came out of Brandon House is now running LaSalle's. And those individuals have to work or whatever, cut grass and do whatever, and so therefore we employ their efforts. But anything to get the wheels to recycling and to try to offset this alarming situation or crisis or malady that's happening to the community, I applaud the efforts upon and your ability and see the sheriff and many of the other individuals that come together to go to these forums to educate individuals or whatever. I attended a few and I saw you all there, and and the people asked questions and how they could do this. You had the answers, and so I think there are people that message just needs to be spread abroad, because some people are concerned and how can I help? And then the most important thing is how can we help others? And the rehabilitation is the way, but how we fund it is still up in the air.
And thank you very much for that. Other than that, that's about it. We're still on our grant, ending in May here. We're covering all the Narcan throughout the area, but we're also working on another grant, and we're that close to getting that another $225,000. Hopefully we get that to continue to work hard. Tonight we'll be in Moments for a Narcan program to finish out our last of our police officers, and it's just a constant go, but we're doing it. So thank you for everything, and happy holidays, everybody.
Thank you, Bob. Thank you. Sheriff. In your packet, you have the Sheriff's Monthly Report. Need a motion to approve. Mr. Washington, second by Ms. Evans. Sorry about that. Brain cramp. All in favor? Opposed? Morning.
Morning.
How are you?
I'm good. There's really the monthly report. I think we're all aware of the numbers as far as out of county and locals. If you look at section B under transports, the total number across the bottom there through November of 2017 is 2,453 transports. Some of those, under the sections of the feds, are reimbursed, at least our officer mileage, and then some medical, but we don't have that information available at this point. So some of those transports are reimbursed, others are not. Under section C, if you look down at the DOC commitments, I think it's important to know that last year there were 555 individuals released from the Illinois Department of Corrections and 113 that were sentenced to Illinois Department of Corrections. This year, there was 494 released from the Illinois Department of Corrections and 138 sentenced. So we are narrowing that gap a little bit as far as, you know, who's getting released and back in our community. You know, unfortunately, you know, with recidivism the way it is, a lot of these people end up back in our jail, and that's just a cycle that we continue to fight daily. Any questions on the corrections side?
Any more for sure?
Our sworn services, I won't spend a lot of time on just because the numbers are what they are. Our productivity in all areas continues to increase, which is a credit to our deputies and the job they do, and continuing to do more with less. And our revenue, as we actually, I don't want to say predicted, I guess guessed would be a better term. We thought that our number of housing would come in about 8.4 million, and we were actually at 8,473,252. So if I'd have known that back in November of last year, I'd have went to Vegas and tried to parlay that into some more money. Questions on the revenue or anything else on this report?
Anyone for the sheriff?
Just a heads up, some of you may be aware that our radios, and I know Tom's aware of it because he's trying to find money for it. On January 1st of 2020, our radio system will be changing to going all digital. Fortunately for us, our mobiles at this point, not our mobiles, our portables, the handheld radios that the officers carry are all digital. They're ready to go. We purchased those out of our seizure fund a year and a half ago or so. Those are ready to go. It's the radios that are going in the cars, the mobile units, that are going to be the cost. And early estimates now, and what they're trying to do is they're working with Motorola. The cost of the radios is very expensive, as we all know. However, Motorola is working with officials countywide, all departments, anybody who needs radios, and ultimately the county is going to benefit from a group purchase that will be about $140,000 to $150,000. However, that is 40% less than what it would cost us originally to just go buy them ourselves. So if you do the math, I mean, that's a significant savings. And there will be some lease options, there will be some finance options that will come out later, but I just want to make the committee aware that this is something that we're going to have to do in less than 2 years. No, almost 2 years, I guess, a little more. Questions on that?
Mr. Hess.
Thank you. Sheriff, when you say group, are you talking about the other communities in
Yes.
the county?
Yes.
So,
Yes, everybody. I mean, all the municipalities, I mean, schools have radios. I mean, it'll be a big purchase. So that's why the discount is so large.
okay.
I think the next item on my agenda is the DOC releases. Oh, surplus vehicles. Yeah, that's on here too. I have given the list to Diane. I have 2 surplus vehicles. 2 of them are Tahoes that we're replacing. They're 2011 Tahoes. And then the third one is a vehicle that was seized that has gone through the court process. It's a 2001 Chevrolet Tracker. That needs to be declared surplus as well. And then those will be sent down to the Clinton auction and sold down there.
Okay, need a motion to approve. Mr. Hess, second by Mr. McConnell. All in favor? Opposed?
Okay, now the DOC releases. So I talked a little bit about those numbers and how individuals come back from the Illinois Department of Corrections. We get notified. I think the state gets notified, the public defender gets notified, probation gets notified by the Illinois Department of Corrections when somebody is being released and where they're being released to. Normally the releases we get are individuals who are being released back into our community. And this kind of goes with what Mr. Rowe had talked about, and Ms. Evans, I think it may, you know, answer a little bit of your issue too. There's an individual, and there's a number of these, and I could sit up here and talk for a couple hours about people who get released from prison. And when we talk about nonviolent versus violent, case number 17CF106 is a residential burglary. I'm not going to give you his name. If you want to go into court view and look it up, it's 17CF106 is the case number. That individual came into our custody on March the 1st, 2017. He was sentenced to 5 years in prison for residential burglary. He was admitted to the Illinois Department of Corrections on June 9th of 2017, so actually a pretty quick turnaround, all things considered. He was paroled last Saturday on a 5-year sentence. So now, I'm, you know, as I said, I'd go to Vegas, and, you know, I don't like to go to Vegas and I don't gamble, but if I was a gambling man, I'll bet you he'll be back. Just a guess. He serves 279 days on a 5-year sentence. So obviously, as Mr. Snipes obviously referenced, he didn't get corrected in those 279 days. But that's information that you as a committee need to be aware of as to why our population is what it is. The state's saving money. That's why they do it. They go through and they get their nonviolent, maybe they don't have an extensive criminal history, and they release them. And instead of the state paying for it, all that cost comes back to the county. So, yeah. Right. So, any questions on that?
Anything for Sheriff?
Real quick, on our local population, we talked about, and that continues to stay where we've been the last 2 or 3 months. In November, we averaged 282 just on our local population, which is up significantly from 203 back in December of 2016. So that local population is not going anywhere. The last thing on the agenda is an inspection. It's what's called an ODO inspection, and ODO stands for the Office of Detention Oversight, and this is strictly through because we house ICE detainees. Most of you will recall we've already gone through a couple of inspections. This is our 3rd inspection in under a year. 2 through Nakamoto and 1 through the ODO, or the Office of Detention Oversight. This was 3 full days where we had 9 individuals from all over the country coming in and making sure that our jail is up to snuff on everything involving ICE, everything we do. And I can tell you that it was a stressful week. When we are gambling, all of our why we got a gambling theme today, but you know, I mean, it is imperative, obviously, for the benefit of the county that this program stay where it's at, and the pressure that our staff underwent, not only these 3 days, but the prior 6 months preparing for it was unbelievable. I tell you, it was stressful, but it was also successful. So a credit to Chief Kalawinzu in the back, Chief Schultz, and the whole entire corrections staff who worked on this tirelessly, without complaint, and we got a lot of good feedback. When you have 9 inspectors from all over the country come in and tell you that your staff is professional, your staff knows their job, your staff does a good job, from outsiders, that's always good to hear. And so a credit to the corrections staff for what they do and what they did during this inspection.
Thank you,
Mr. McConnell?
Sheriff, can you get that as a press release that would go out and people would know that? Now, that's pretty important. That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, that's a touchy subject
Is
with
it?
ICE. Yeah, I mean, we don't really want to bring attention to the whole ICE thing. That's a whole nother.
That's pretty impressive, though.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you know, they should, you know, hold their heads high for what they do, and how they do it. I mean, they stepped up, but that's under, you know, Chief Kalawinzu, Chief Schultz's leadership that, you know, we got to where we are. So,
Mr. Snipes.
I do know that we don't want to bring the attention to the ICE, but what I will say is definitely extend to them our I don't want to say accolades, but our sentiments that they're doing a great job.
I will do that.
Or whatever, as far as that's concerned. And then, not to add a little sour note, but I want to just get some information. We read in the paper where a Cook County inmate kicked one of our officers as far as that was concerned.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that wasn't in the ICE part, was it?
No.
Okay, that was in our regular jail.
Yes.
Or whatever, and so therefore I'm just looking to you. I know that incidents just happen or whatever, but with that particular inmate, I know we house them, but for the purpose of our officer, you know, because certainly work with cognitive stuff kicks in, does Chicago share any of that cost?
Well, we charged him locally.
Oh, okay.
So it'll all go through. I mean, Cook County does not share the cost. However, the court process will hopefully. I mean, we're not going to get any money from the guy, but so no, Cook County does not share the cost of that.
Oh, okay. Just want to.
That's unfortunately the cost of doing business. So just for the record, our next Nakamoto inspection is scheduled for March of 2018. So as we get done with one, we start another one. So there is much more involved with ICE than most people think. So questions on the inspections?
Sure.
The last thing, and it's didn't put it on the agenda just because I just want to bring it up and let you guys take it to where you want to take it to. And I know Mr. McConnell has been very outspoken on this issue. But I would suggest that we maybe talk about creating some sort of fund based on the amount of money that's brought in every month. We've suggested this since 2005 when we first started housing prisoners. It doesn't have to be a lot, but you know, it shouldn't take 6 months to get a corrections van. When we're doing 2,500 transports a year, it shouldn't take 6 months to be able to purchase a van that we require to go to Chicago for the marshals, for ICE, we go to Springfield, we go to the airlift in Rockford. You know, that's going to serve a couple purposes. It's going to speed up the process a little bit, and you're not going to pay interest on a lease. I think that's, you know, wasting money. And I would suggest, I don't know if we, you know, the chairman left, or I don't know if he stepped out, or, oh, he is. Yeah. But, you know, I don't know if they want to set up, Steve, if you want to set up a committee of some sort to discuss it. It does, like I said, it doesn't have to be a lot.
Perhaps a combination of people in finance and this committee.
Yeah, I mean, certainly it's obviously something that, you know, we understand the dynamics of the whole cash flow issue. You know, if the money is set aside in that fund, if the county needs that money, they can certainly use it or take it. It's theirs. But I just think that there needs to be something that gets placed on the side to say, hey, we need 50 new mattresses, you know, because of the program. I mean, it just makes sense. And like I said, I just don't think we want to go down the same road that we've gone through for, you know, over 12 or 13 years now.
Sheriff, do you got any idea on what we have spent on interest alone because we haven't done this?
No. Have to talk to the finance department on that.
It's got to be a substantial amount of money.
Yeah.
And I believe way back we had suggested 5 new cars every year. And I understand we had a crunch, but the point being is we spent a bucket of money on interest. And I would agree with the sheriff. And again, that's my soapbox.
I think it's something that is worth looking into, and if we can put a group together and investigate it and see what works.
I can tell you that yesterday, as I'm sitting in my office writing down notes for today's meeting, I see 2 corrections vans fly by on 57 going lights and sirens. Now, for those of you unfamiliar, corrections vans don't go lights and sirens unless there's an emergency. Our bus was on the exit ramp in Monee, had broken down with 15 ICE detainees on it. So, fortunately, we got there, we got them back here, but being out in no man's land with a broken down bus and 15 detainees on it is not something we want to go through every other day.
I think we ought to just go to the chairman and say we need to put 2 guys together in finance and say come up with a program and present it.
Mr. Lear.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Certainly, I think discussing this with the chairman in terms of setting up a committee to look at some possibilities here is appropriate. Clearly, this board has chosen to pass a budget where we're trying to get our finances in order in terms of our debt relief and the line item we have there. That may become a model for something that we can do in terms of this particular issue. But a working group would be a good suggestion. Thank you, Sheriff.
And I'm not opposed to looking at all the funds. You know, the DUI fund. There's a fund for money that goes into vehicles. I don't know where that money go. I mean, I guess that's the thing that I think. I'm not opposed to having looking at all the funds in every department, not just the sheriff's office. I mean, I think it's important. I think it's important for you guys. I think it's important for all of us as a county to make sure that, you know, we're getting the best bang for our buck. So that's all I got.
This is nice.
I do know that,
in the microphone, please.
Is this thing working now?
Yes,
No.
it is.
Okay.
Better
2 things are, because it's not on the action item, but it can be up on the old business, and I think we addressed one, and that's to kind of get the committee together, kind of look at the cost. But what I also want to make sure is in there is the proactive to also deal with the new radios that have to be financed as well. I think we have to have that conversation before we have to replace it in 2 years, so that we'll be ready. So if they can add that to it, it'll be appreciative. Thank you.
You're welcome. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry
Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas. Old business. Any old business before the committee? Oh, Mr. Gabois.
This is FYI for everyone who's not on the Bills and Grounds Committee. I will report this on Thursday. I'm meeting with the painting and scaffolding company for the courthouse As you were aware, in June, the courthouse was hit by lightning. We'll be scaffolding the third floor over the top of in the rotunda, over the top of the opening there, to go up into the dome and make painting and ceiling repairs up in there. So we're going to try and schedule this over the holidays, as the courthouse is in slow-mo, if you will. So I'll be meeting with them on Thursday.
Thank you. Any new business, Diane?
This is just a reminder to everyone, the January 10th meeting will be at the 189 Court Street building on the 4th floor boardroom. So just for the 1 month, because they have something going on here with computers.
Yep.
7:30.
Yeah. January 10th, yep. Next meeting, we'll be there. I need a motion to adjourn. Mr. Legess, seconded by Mr. Hess. Have a great day, everybody.